Hi everybody, thank you for joining me for yet another episode of Greyhound Research ONTrigger. Like every time, this time as well we have a very interesting guest with us. He's somebody who started his career in the US Army, is an avid pilot, and also leads Asia for one of the largest tech brands, IBM. Paul, thank you for making time.
Appreciate it, glad to be here.
So, what more do you do? I mean, you lead the region for IBM, you're a pilot, you started a career in the Army. Is there things you don't do, Paul?
Well, I run out of time before I can do it all, let's put it that way. But no, I stay pretty busy. You know, as you said, I started in the Army, and when I left the military, I got straight into tech with HP way back when. And, you know, it's just been a career, it's been a journey, you know, for the last 30 years.
Okay, so how many licenses do you have? I'm sure you drive a car, you drive a motorcycle, you have a pilot license, I'm sure. How many licenses do you have?
Let me see if I can count them. I drive a car, I'm licensed to drive a car, I'm licensed to drive a motorcycle, fly a plane, to cave dive.
Right.
And if you want to count my law license, that's I guess that's 5.
So you're a lawyer as well?
I don't practice, I'm reformed.
So 5 licenses in total. So tell me an interesting story, let's say. When was the last time you flew a plane, actually?
Yeah. Well, it was a few years ago. I was still in the States at that time, and I owned my own plane in Atlanta.
Nice.
And I actually flew all around the country. I traveled on business in my own plane for a number of years.
In your own plane?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've flown coast to coast in the United States, which is, you know, probably 14 hours in a small plane. But, you know, you'd make stops along the way. You see a client here, a client there, have dinner, check into a hotel.
That's nice.
It turns into an adventure.
That's the nice life to have, huh? But tell me, let's say when you're flying a plane, there's lots of levers to control, there's lots happening there. Do you sort of draw parallels to your work?
Well, you know, the thing with flying a plane is you can get yourself in trouble pretty quickly because when you're flying a plane, first of all, you're in 3 dimensions, not 2. Right? And the second thing is it's when you're responding in 3 dimensions, and you have to respond fairly quickly, because if you're doing 200 miles an hour, things happen faster.
It's true, though.
And when you're in 3 dimensions, they happen seemingly faster. And so what I find, and I think what most pilots would tell you when they're flying a plane, is there's certain procedures you follow, there's certain order of actions, there's certain ways you do certain things. And the trick is you do them the same exact way at all times, so that when you're under pressure and you're under stress and you're overloaded from a task perspective, you can do things without thinking, and you know you're doing them correctly. But the only way that happens is if you train, and you train consistently. Right. And so in that sense, it's a process. And so, you know, you can equate that to, you know, project management, software development, systems integration, a sales pursuit, you know, business development. It's a process. You do things in a certain way, and if you do them in that way, your chances of success increase.
That's right, and you can't go wrong with it, right? You know, in the air, you need to ensure your flight's up, right?
Well, you hope nothing. You hope you can't go wrong with it, but crazy things happen. But it maximizes your chance of success.
True, but you know, let's change gears a little bit. This is your second stint in Asia. The last time you were here, it was 2011 sometime. You were in China, and that was a very different Asia. In the last decade, a lot has happened from a digital evolution perspective. Now, in the last 10 months of being around in Asia, share with me some of your key observations, some things that you really took back and said, wow, you know, how much Asia has changed, and things that was like, oh God, nothing has changed.
Well, I mean, in many ways, Asia culturally, obviously, is the same. The countries are the same. You know, the people are the same, but the emphasis has changed from a business perspective. You know, 10, 12 years ago, digital transformation was just, you know, coming upon us. We were just beginning to talk in earnest about cloud, about analytics, you know, about social, mobile, all of these things. And but now the most important thing I can say, or the most you know, significant development in my mind, is everybody understands and everyone agrees, governments, businesses, everyone agrees that you have to digitally transform.
True that, yeah.
And if you don't digitally transform, there's a real chance that you're going to be, left out of economic opportunity, or in an extreme situation, left out of the global economy, because supply chains will go around you. You won't have access to skills, resources, technology, etc. So if you don't have the skills on board and you're not digitally transformed to the point where you can plug in electronically, if you will, to supply chains, opportunities, B2B, whatever we're talking about, if you don't have all of that going on, it's a real problem.
True. Now, let's talk about the IBM Paul inherited. I'm sure when you came in, there were some things you thought were amazingly done in the past, and I'm sure there were things you said, no, that needs to change now, and how, right? Especially at a time when IBM is changing course in a very, very significant manner. So talk about the IBM you inherited here in Asia.
Well, so 2 years before I arrived here in Asia, so 2020, I guess, Arvind, of course, was appointed CEO in, I believe, April of 2020. And so Arvind brought with him a fresh energy and a fresh perspective in terms of how IBM was going to be relevant and thrive, if you will, going forward. So all about hybrid cloud and AI. He made some bold moves. We spun out what is now Kyndryl, which allowed us to focus very keenly on technology, and then a set of consulting services aimed at helping clients transform. So if you want to look at it, IBM's got two big motions right now. Technology transformation. So technology, hardware, software, broadly. You can throw in cloud as well. I don't want to leave that out. And then transformation, the consulting services that help clients make the big changes.
True. But you come to Asia at a very interesting time. The US dollar is rallying very strong, and that doesn't mean good for the global economy all the time. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is an all-time high. There is choppiness in relationships with China. Now, how does that shape your strategy, and more importantly, your gut about Asia?
I think, well, there's a lot in that question. So let me step back, and I think I can say this pretty succinctly and briefly. We're coming to the end of an era where those of us of age that have had a 20 years career during this period of time, that era is coming to an end. And what I mean by that is, if you go back to the late 1980s when China was getting involved deeply and aggressively in the global economy, they opened up their economy, okay? And all of this labor hits the world markets, if you will, for labor. India is coming in big. So a couple billion people enter the labor market. Soviet Union goes away, Russia emerges, Eastern Europe is now out from underneath the Soviet Union. All of that labor hits the market. So we had the confluence of forces happening here, and what I mean by that is all of this labor hits the market. It keeps labor rates or labor prices down. Supply chains are reconfigured around the world to take advantage of low-cost labor. That's number one. If labor is low and labor prices are low, no reason to raise interest rates, so interest rates remain low. If interest rates are low, capital is cheap. So now what do we have? We have cheap labor, cheap capital, and it's no surprise that we've had a tremendous amount of economic growth over the last 30, 35 years. But guess what? We're now at a different point in time demographically, because demographic pyramids are starting to invert, and we're having a lot of people retiring relative to the new people coming into the labor force. And so what I'm suggesting will happen, just the exact opposite essentially of what did happen. You're going to see less labor entering the labor force, and of the labor that's coming in, how much of it is really skilled or ready to go in terms of picking up these digital and technology skills that we need to keep this economy moving. That's number one. And then number two, rates. If you've got less labor coming in, labor rates have to go up. So now we have the inflation situation, because if labor rates are going up, then inflation will go up. And what happens when inflation goes up? Of course, we raise interest rates, right? And you're seeing central banks do that. So is the US dollar strong? Sure. Because of the inflation and all of the other associated things. And that will probably stay that way, I imagine, for a time. I'm not an economist. But so just make sure, I'm not offering economic advice. But that dovetails into your question, that basically I said we're in a different era. And so the era of cheap capital, low inflation, all of that is over, and we're now into a new era. And we've got to learn how to compete in that era. But there's something interesting that's happening here, and that is this. The world in the last 10 years digitally transformed extensively. we've employed a tremendous amount of technology to drive supply chains, to automate, to do all these interesting things that we talk about, rather mundanely these days. Well, guess what? That's not going away. We have to have the skills to keep all that technology going and to evolve it into whatever comes next.
Agreed.
And so what's going to happen is we think that means, especially if there's a skill shortage just because of the demographics I talked about, what I suggest that means is there's going to be automation. Companies, governments, they're going to have to automate in order to take labor out. One, because the labor is no longer available. And so that's a great opportunity for us. We have quite an automation portfolio, number one. Two, they're going to have to use artificial intelligence because you don't want to just have rote automation that just does the same thing and never is inflexible. So we're going to bake artificial intelligence into the automation so that the automation is a little bit more reflexive and self-aware, if you want to look at it that way. And so who's producing the software portfolios? Who's producing the technology? Who has the capabilities? Who has the vision to say, these are the things that we see happening in the macro environment. This is how it's going to affect business. And therefore, we need to start thinking about automation, AI, hybrid cloud, which is huge, which dovetails nicely with all of that. All of that's going to happen. And so we think from an IBM perspective that we're well positioned to bring the technology and the consultancy to bear to help clients, whether they be government or private enterprise, deal with all of that. And so that's what's happening in Asia, but it's not just happening in Asia, it's happening worldwide.
Globally, rather, yeah.
But it's happening a little bit different in each region. The US is quite mature and sophisticated in its market. Europe is having some geopolitical tensions at the moment, let's just say it that way. And then there's Asia Pacific, where less geopolitical tension, but at the same time, the markets are not around the region are not necessarily as well developed as perhaps either Europe or the US.
It's very patchy in terms of development, right?
Yeah, so it's patchy. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in Asia Pacific, and it's for that reason that I say pretty much everywhere I go that you've heard other people say, books written on this. This is the Asian decade.
Yeah,
I believe that.
The decade of the region.
Yeah,
really,
this is the decade for Asia Pacific. I believe that. I believe that Asia Pacific will grow, and more importantly, for the reasons I just described, whatever Asia Pacific is growing at, the technology market is going to grow a little bit faster.
That's true. That.
Because of all the technology that needs to be deployed, maintained, evolved, etc.
Paul, you're also very different from other AP leaders I've met in the past, and I mean this in a good way. You carry a certain aggression with you, which I think was much needed in Asia.
I'm really a very nice person.
I know you are, but I'm just saying that there is a healthy level of aggression that I think is required, especially at a time when IBM is morphing into this product company. And as a product company, the amount of aggression in terms of sales and digital sales and push has to be of much level difference, a different level altogether, because and we spoke about this earlier today, that responding to before RFPs even are created, but there's also going to be a huge sales motion which is going to be requiring RFP-based responses at scale, and that's where this aggression can really come to use to sort of channelize the partners. Having said that, Asia has always been very partner-led. It's been very rich in terms of the skills we've had in partners, but the Pareto's 80-20 principle applies, where only 20% of the partners really move the needle when it comes to large deals, mega deals, and all of that. Now, as somebody who is a true believer in channels, in your own words, a channel is the king, really, right? How do you think about the new channels for Asia? Because the same measures of the past will not really work in the new IBM.
Well, so I was here 12 years ago. I lived in Shanghai for a period of time. So I was full-time in the region, living in the region, I think 10, 11, 12, and 13. But I've been traveling to and from the region consistently for the last probably 14 years at this point. And it is a partner-led region. And if I were to put a number on that, I'd say at least 2/3 of the addressable market for IBM is only addressable through partners. Yeah, so 2/3 is a big number. And so if we're going to post any type of growth, we're going to have to grow that 2/3 chunk of the market. we have to address it and we have to be successful with it, which means we got to have an ecosystem strategy or a partner strategy that makes sense. And it can't just make sense for IBM, it's got to make sense for the partner too. So that's this idea of this shared value proposition that I talked about a little bit earlier today. And we've got to craft a shared value proposition that makes sense for IBM, but that the partners fully embrace because they have to want to work with us. Sure. So that's point one. The second point is I think IBM over the years, I'm just being a little bit critical at this point, I think IBM over the years has not had, especially in AP by the way, has not had the intensity of focus and the long-term commitment to the channel that it needs. You can go out and say a bunch of things, but if you don't follow through with it, you don't stick with it day after day, month after month, year after year, then you're fickle.
I appreciate your candor though, because it's a tough thing to call out really for IBM.
Well, I mean, if you don't recognize the problem, how are you going to fix it, right? And so I've been, from the day I got here on January 4th, I think one of the first things I did is I mentioned that we're doubling down on the channel and we're going to get serious about it. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the set of partners who have a vision that's compatible with ours, that we can work successfully with, that we want to have a shared intimacy with, and that we can go to market together with. And we will invest in them, and to some extent, obviously, we're going to expect them to invest back in us. They invest back in us by getting trained on our technology, learning our methodologies, and approaching client segments, and dealing with issues that, of course, are good for us.
So let's double click on that a little bit. Even before we talk about the additions you're going to make in terms of, let's say, training, manpower, etc. First, let's talk about a little sticky topic, which is, have you actually fired a few partners for not doing the right business your way?
Well, let's put it. I don't like to use the word fired. As a reformed lawyer, I try to not make absolute statements.
That? Okay.
We've de-emphasized several partners, and we'll continue to de-emphasize more partners. Look, we have a very specific strategy, hybrid cloud AI. We have a specific product set. We can go through that. We have specific methodologies and capabilities, and we have an outlook on the world. And that's not necessarily for everybody, but it's for many. That's true. And so if you match up with all of that, then we want to be a partner with you. And we don't have to partner in every opportunity because our interests will never 100% overlap. But we will partner with you, and we'll work collaboratively with you, and we will go do business together, not only for our own mutual benefit, but primarily, of course, for the benefit of the client who we need to deliver value to.
Is there a percentage of the partners you have de-emphasized on?
Well, I haven't done the math lately, and I haven't tallied it, but we've definitely de-emphasized some partners in favor of other partners for the purpose of delivering better value to our clients.
The reason I say that is because there is power in focus, and I think what IBM did in the past was to try and be relevant to everybody and appeal to everybody, and that was same for the partners as well.
Yeah, if you're everything to everybody, you're nothing to everyone.
That's the point. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think, and so we have an idea. We have this belief that we'll focus with certain partners, and we'll invest in them, and they'll invest in us. And there's no limit on how many that can be. So it's not as if we're purposely excluding anyone. We're not. But we have so much resource and so much attention, and those that are knocking on our door saying, hey, we think we can work successfully with you, let's go do it.
So even before we talk about nitty-gritties in terms of quality of service, training, and the other aspects, let's talk a 30,000 feet figure about the matrix you're going to drive in terms of partners. Because the way I look at Asia, there has to be a matrix and overlaps in terms of horizontals, which is product strength, vertical strengths, in-country strengths, and anything else that relates to compliance and regulation. Yeah. Now, how are you sort of shaping the new matrix around the channel partner strategy?
Well, I mean, you can look at it in three dimensions. Obviously, you got to, partners are country by country. I mean, clearly there's system integrators that span the region and span the globe for that matter, and we have a strategy specifically for them. But a lot of the partners that we will do business with, perhaps a step down from the global 50 in that market segment, they're going to be specific to a country. And so we're operating in at least 15 countries in Asia Pacific. And so we've got to have partners in every one of those countries. So the first dimension is country. Second dimension is the capability that we're interested in, data, security, cloud, et cetera. And then the third dimension is really the solution, the industry within that solution space. So financial services obviously is a big industry for us. Communications or comms, manufacturing, et cetera. And even those vary a little bit by country. Some countries are stronger in some industries and less strong in other industries. But those are the primary three dimensions.
But do you think country is the right measure of going forward? I'll tell you why I'm saying it, because I've been speaking to some of your partners, and what they talk about is the lack of opportunity in countries sometimes, because they've reached a certain scale and type where they feel and believe that there are parallels, let's say in Indonesia, there are parallels in other countries which they can also cater to. But there's always this zone of conflict with local partners who may not have the same expertise in that, probably that industry, but gets to win that deal. Now, how do you change that?
Well, I mean, that's a very, partner-specific or opportunity-specific scenario. And let's be honest about it. I mean, there are certain partners in Malaysia, just to pick a country, that have long-standing relationships with certain clients. Sure. And so those clients are always going to do business with a small set of partners who they've built relationships with over the years. And so, and those partners will consume our technology in many cases. Those partners will want to consume our consulting services in collaboration in certain cases. And so at the end of the day, the client is going to pick the partner that they want to work with based on relationship and based on value add. And relationship does play quite a role. And so we don't try to disrupt that per se. I mean, because relationships are long-standing. What we try to do is recognize that certain relationships exist, and how can we add value from a technology perspective or a skills perspective for the benefit ultimately of the end client.
But I must mention that there's going to be areas where you will find increasingly that partners may not have strengths and are not able to keep up in terms of skills, and you may need, let's say, another partner stepping in alliance with another partner, just to ensure comfort of the customer, because undercutting on licensing costs is probably quite the norm in Asia, where people cut costs on licensing just to win the deal. But sure, that's not what will move the needle for IBM in the long run. So just saying, But you spoke about conflict and the deal registration, etc., is also a huge area of conflict for partners. Now, as you go and align more with value-added resellers, distributors, MSPs and all, how are you sort of streamlining the deal registration process to ensure zero conflict?
Well, I don't know that we can ever ensure zero conflict, because partners will become aware of an opportunity in a client and they'll register it. Yeah. And they may register it at the client using different deal names, different opportunity names, different descriptions of what the deal is. And so how do we deconflict all of that? It's not necessarily obvious, but what I will say is we've increased our commitment in the channel in terms of resourcing, and our resources that work with partners in the channel generally have a pretty good handle on what's going on in their particular territories with clients, with partners, and with opportunity. And they'll generally deconflict it on the ground. And so it's not necessarily happening in an automated way, through some, deal passing system, although we do have all of that. But it's happening, based on relationships on the ground. The funny thing is we're in a very technologically advanced world. It's getting more technologically advanced all the time. But at the end of the day, it's still relationships on the ground, people talking to people.
It's P2P, right? It's person to person.
P2P, I like that.
P2P, yeah. So, another area which sort of is very particular to Asia is the deal discounting, especially in the cost-sensitive markets like India.
Is there a non-cost-sensitive market?
Well, yeah, few are. I mean, like Australia doesn't mind paying good value for your money.
Are your videos popular in Australia?
Well, look. But the thing is, how do you sort of standardize that deal discounting mechanism?
Well, it's so look, when partners come on board with IBM, they sign up and they're entitled to a certain discount off of the software based on their qualifications in terms of badging, enablement, the amount of business that they've done with us in the past. So there's certain criteria that go into that, and that's standard. It's not different for this partner and different for that partner. And so we maintain a level playing field among partners. Okay, so we don't play those games. It's 100% level playing field. It's very objective, and it should be easy to figure it out. Now, what partners, if a partner decides that they're going to structure a deal in a particular way, at the end of the day, that's completely up to them. We don't get involved in that because we don't tell the partner how to price. We don't tell them how to solution. We help, we assist, we train, we enable, we offer, we recommend, we advise. But at the end of the day, the partner is an independent company, and they got to make those choices. So I will say that from time to time, we've de-emphasized a partner whose business practices have not, been up to our standards, and we'll continue to do that because we have to have extremely high ethical standards in terms of how we operate in the channel, because it's important that clients and governments know that when they're dealing with IBM, it's 100% objective, above board, legit, nothing funny happening.
It is what you expect of IBM.
Yeah. It's part of who we are.
You also mentioned something interesting. So, you continuously train these people. Now, talk about the changes being made to the training modules and the ways and the manners and processes, because IBM is also changing. So, how are you changing training around the new IBM to land that message and the delivery accordingly? So,
we just did something very important, and we did it in the last week. Actually, I made a video on this not too long ago. And so we have a bunch of training materials and enablement materials that we use to train IBM salespeople as well as IBM technical people.
Right.
All of that is now available at no cost to partners, all of it. And I think that's significant. One, because we used to charge for it, which I always thought was a bad idea. And so I won that. I won that argument. So long story short is all of those materials are now available on an equal basis at no charge to IBMers and partners. That's first. Second is, it's nice that it's available and it's free, but now we need more and better. And so I personally am in constant conversations with our general managers of the product divisions, New York, and about how we can have better training materials, better enablement materials, because we got some really complex products. We got some products that have a tremendous amount of functionality and capability, and which makes enablement difficult. And at the end of the day, if partners can't get comfortable with our products and they can't solution for them and sell them and deploy them,
it's not a win-win.
It's not a win-win.
Yeah. What I've also noticed in my experience is that the success of partners often hinges on the availability of the pool of TAMs. Now, it's a double-edged sword to have, because most vendors, I'm sure even it happens at IBM as well, these TAMs end up pulling, get pulled for deals internally for large clients, and the availability of TAMs for partners becomes lesser and lesser. Now, how do you manage that?
Yeah, so so all of our TAMs, as you describe it, are allocated to specific accounts. Okay. And we have TAMs in the ecosystem that are allocated not only to specific territories and partners that operate in those territories, but in many cases we have TAMs that are dedicated to particular partners. And so that's part of the investment that we'll make in partners. And the whole idea there is if we have a partner that is into data, their offerings surround, CP4D, data fabric, working with clients on data, then we'll have a TAM with that particular skill set. And then we may even go a step further and assign what we call a lab advocate to the partner, where they have a name and a phone number where they can call directly into our India labs and get as detailed as they want to get with our products, down to the code level, if that's really where they want to go. But I guess my point is we're very serious about if partners want to commit and go deep on our products, we will meet them there. We will go there with them, 100%.
Don't get me wrong, but I meet many leaders like you. The mission statement, the vision statement is exactly that. But when it comes to the rubber hitting the road, oftentimes partners do struggle. And so do IBM partners, with the availability of TAMs. How do you resolve that lack of availability of support?
Well, so everywhere I go, and, I'm across the region every week. I'm in a different country, oftentimes 2 countries in 1 week. And when I run into either IBMers who tell me they can't get support or a partner that tells me they can't get enablement, I take action. Okay. And now I'm not scalable. I'm just one person, right? And I can pick up the phone and other people, I'm pretty sure they're going to answer, right? But the point I'm trying to make is that I'm setting the standard so that when people understand that this is what we expect to happen, we expect TAMs to be available, we expect salespeople to be responsive, we expect partners to get the things they need to be successful. And when they see me picking up the phone, I was sitting in a partner meeting in Manila, probably about 3 weeks ago, and it was literally with a partner, and the IBM salesperson was sitting right next. IBM salesperson was there, partner was right there, and they told me they were having a hard time getting support on a particular product. And I said, well, what product is that, and what exactly is your issue? They described it to me. I picked up my cell phone, I put it on the table, and I dialed India, right in front of the partner. And I put my development leader on the phone. I said, I'm with this particular partner, we're having this particular problem, can you help? That's how fast it happens. Now, I did that, one, I wanted to solve the problem. Two, I transferred the phone number to the partner because we couldn't carry on the conversation there. But that's the standard. That's the standard. And so when I find out that someone's not getting help or not getting a support, we take action. And when you do that a few times, it amps up the levels.
How does it become a culture across the region?
It becomes a culture as it happens over and over again, repeatedly. Remember, we talked about flying. You got to have a process. Things got to become muscle memory. Well, when the team in the field sees my muscle memory, which is having a partner say that they can't get support or get enabled on a product is unacceptable, and I'm willing to call the labs directly and have a lab person jump on the phone with the partner, and I'm willing to have my CMO, which is, in this case, I had my CMO the next day calling the partner to make sure they fully understand the issues in terms of documentation and training and co-marketing and all the things that surround this. All of a sudden, everyone understands we're serious about the channel.
Now you know what I meant. Asia needs more.
Step
the
by
level
step.
of aggression, we need. Anyway.
Step by step. But you can tell I get amped up when I'm talking about it.
So, you spoke about marketing, and look, that's been an issue not just for IBM, but I think for every vendor. Standardizing partner marketing is quite an issue because, look, the fact is partners don't have the same level of availability of skills, be it in terms of content, be it in terms of agencies, be it in terms of even material.
We can do all of it. And here's what I mean by that.
Give me some specifics, please.
So I'll be specific. So when I first got here in January, so I had a pretty good idea of what I thought the issues were because I've been in the region so much over the years, and obviously I lived here a number of years ago. And so in that sense, a lot of things hadn't changed. But here's the point, is we spend a lot of money on marketing and market intelligence and market insights and understanding what's going on out there, just as any big corporation does. And so we have a sense of what's going on. So corporate can call the plays. Corporate can say, we're not selling as much ABC in APAC as we should. So let's run some marketing around that. They can go out and create canned plays or canned sales campaigns. But then we need to pick up those sales campaigns and customize them for the partner, the industry, and the region. So here's what I specifically did in APAC, probably within 45 days of getting here, is we now take our co-marketing team for the channel, and we have them, corporate produces this stuff every quarter, right, and we pick them up and start customizing them for Indonesia with Bahasa, Thai with Thai, et cetera, et cetera. English plays well in the Philippines and in Singapore, but Korea with Korean. So we pick up the campaigns and we customize them, and then our business partner people go out to the partners that specialize in data management, if it's a data management campaign or whatever, and we put together specific plans with the partner to go do this for them. Right. And it's not dependent on the partner having a marketing team. We have the marketing engine. We have third parties that work for us that help localize the content, do microsites, do telephone campaigns, all that kind of, in the local language, of course. So we can bring to bear all of those resources to do this with the partner if the partner, A, wants to participate, sure, and two, they obviously have to have some sense of what their market is and, clients. If we're going to do an event, we have to rely on the partner to bring the people to the event, right? I mean, we can certainly probably round up a few and get them there, but partner has to have skin in the game. They're not a bystander. Right. They can't just show up and say, IBM, do it all for me. This is a partnership. Right. And so what we find is when partners want to work with us and they want to do marketing with us, we are far more aggressive and far more capable. than perhaps in the past.
Interesting. And how does the inside sales engine, which is a digital sales or whatever you call it, dovetails into this entire effort? Because ultimately, that's the proof of the pudding in a way, right?
Yeah. So when we do digital campaigns, would be a good example, and people fill out the traditional form on the website, or perhaps they just call in someplace. All of that stuff gets tracked and dropped into a database. No big news there. We have our intake team, our digital team, in various centers around the region, and they pick up every single one of those contacts, and they call them and qualify it. Not qualify it in terms of you're really going to buy, when you're going to buy, but qualify it as a legitimate lead, warranting sales attention, and then we get it to a partner, and we usually do it within hours, not days.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if there's a weekend involved, maybe it's a couple days.
Sure.
But hours, not days. And by the way, I look at these metrics. Just to the extent that I'm different than everyone else, I actually pull the raw data. My marketing team is going crazy because I said, dump me the data for lead generation since January 1st, the raw data. I says, don't hand me Cognos reports, don't hand me canned stuff, give me the raw data and a data dictionary so I know what you think these fields mean. I drop it into R and I crunch.
Bless everybody who works for you, Paul.
What's that?
Bless everybody who works for you.
They're not always happy with my appetite for data, but trust me, I look at raw data and I crunch it and I do my own visuals.
Right. Now, let's talk about GSIs, and I'll tell you where that comes from, the Global System Integrators. It's a very important part of IBM's ecosystem motion today, right? Now, but within the GSIs as well, not all GSIs are built equally, right? Wipro is very different to an HCL, to an Infosys. Talk to me about some of the relationships you are using here in Asia specifically, and some of these can be also local system integrators, tier 2, which may be very relevant for that country.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk NCS for Singapore as an example. Obviously in India, there's quite a few global integrators, and you mentioned a few of them. Look, we have a different motion for the global integrators than we do for integrators particular to a geography, NCS for AP, even though NCS is expanding. And so from a worldwide perspective, IBM corporate-wide obviously has a big relationship with Accenture, with Deloitte, with TCS, with Infosys, et cetera. And so there is a global coverage scheme for those integrators. But then when it comes to locally, and as it turns out, India is in our neighborhood, right? So we have the ability in Asia Pacific to plant GSI reps, if you want to look at it that way, with them directly in India and do co-development or co-creation with them to get them spun up deeply on our technology, whether that be OpenShift or some of our Cloud Pak technology or whatever, and really enable their teams to become experts on our technology. And that's something that we have a bit of an advantage of in AP, only because they exist in AP. I mean, they're headquartered in India, right? So we do that. But so two things. One, we have a global coverage scheme from worldwide because it's a global issue. And then two, we have a very specific program in APAC where we actually assign what I'll call GSI reps to these accounts, primarily in India, but also NCS in Singapore, and we can talk about others. But the idea is because they're big enough and have the scale and have the ability to go deep in particular areas, security might be a good example, we want to make sure that we're spinning them up on our products, our technologies, which is the easy part. But then why not get them involved with our research? Sure. Why not plug them into our labs and make them part of the conversation? One, our researchers get something out of it because now they're getting really grassroots information, but then it gives these guys quite a bit of value as well.
Does it happen so actively though? The handshake with research has always been again, patchy topic for IBM. It happens in spurts.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. So one of the first folks I met, one of the first companies I met when I came here was Singapore Airlines. And within 6 weeks, we had a research engagement going with them. I'm not talking about a paid engagement. I'm talking about we did some work over a WebEx to talk very specifically about IP that would be relevant to an airline. And the only reason it took 6 weeks to put together is we spent 6 weeks planning the agenda, figuring out what agenda would be most valuable to them, who should participate, aligning calendars. And I think 6 weeks, by IBM standards, by the way, is really quick.
But that's a large account again. Let's talk about how do you get partners access to research labs in real life client situations, because again, you know what, for Singapore Airlines, if Paul Burton can pick up the phone and make things happen.
So it's easy, and here's how. So Madhavan Vasudevan, who was on stage at the Analyst, we were doing the Q&A back in the main tent, so to speak. He's the CTO for APAC, and one of his primary missions is to be plugged directly into research to understand the capabilities and the nuggets of wisdom and knowledge and the neat things that they have. And then he sits right next to a person named Vicky Liu, who is my ecosystem leader for APAC. And his job is to make sure that we're taking those capabilities and exposing them not only to clients directly, where it makes sense, but to partners. And so we've done that with security. We've done that with artificial intelligence. By the way, we have a research team here in Singapore, 20 people.
Okay.
As of yesterday. It varies. And so we have the ability to work very deeply in very interesting areas with partners and with clients. And Madhavan's, a large part of Madhavan's role is to expose all of that. But that doesn't mean it's ubiquitous. I mean, there's clearly work to be done. It's not necessarily where I want it to be. But again, it happens one step at a time.
Sure. Another area that I really want to talk to you about is the relationship with hyperscalers. While I see a great amount of motion with AWS and Azure, and rightfully so, these are global motions, but you know, Asia has a lot of its own hyperscalers in many ways, Alibaba and many others in Australia. Telcos are hyperscalers in their own right? Now, I know you have a relationship with Bharti Airtel and Telstra, but how do you sort of, let's say, take Red Hat or let's say other, you know, pre-built IBM assets to these hyperscalers, which necessarily aren't or won't actually warm up to IBM like the global counterparts would?
Well, so the hyperscalers want to fill up the data center. They want to have more CPUs churning. They want to have, you know, all of that. And the best way to do that is to have two things. One, software that clients want to consume, right? So we want to get our software into their marketplace. But the second thing they need is folks that are out there developing, you know, interesting solutions or doing digital transformation projects with clients to direct that consumption their way. And so there's a partnership to be had there. And so it's perfectly natural for us to work, and you heard from Microsoft today, it's perfectly natural for us to work with Amazon or Microsoft or Google or whoever, to include Alibaba. And Indonesia is spinning up quite a business. A lot of hyperscalers are trying to go to Indonesia right now and spin up a business there. And we're talking to them. And we're not talking to just Amazon and Microsoft. In fact, we're talking to them we're talking to them for sure, but we're talking to all of them across the board in Indonesia because we want our software in all of their marketplaces. And we want to have the opportunity, we want to have the opportunity to work with all of them where it makes sense. So we're not playing favorites. We're not focused on just this or just that. As you heard from Ahmed today, you know, we will partner where it makes sense, and we will partner with great intimacy and effect. But there will be points in time where it just doesn't make sense for us to partner on this particular deal, and we'll be honest and tell each other that, because they may be going in a different direction, we may be going in a different direction. That's fine.
Okay, and you know, we've been speaking about developers for a while now, and I want to sort of take this conversation towards the more developer community in Asia, and also the startup community, because that's a sizable, you know, portion in Asia. Now, I get a sense, and you know, I've been speaking to you folks for a while now, and this new IBM messaging and all, I get a sense that it's still a very top-down approach, which is the very US-driven Asia-fed approach. I'll tell you where I'm coming from. There's a large base of startups in the region, which is doing thriving business globally, but I don't still see a very concerted effort to bring in those ISP providers. There's these new age cloud native SaaS providers onto IBM, not just from a sell to motion, but also a sell with motion as well, right? Mm-hmm. Now, how do you sort of plan to sort of take that on? Because that is a very sizable amount of business that these SaaS providers are doing. Yeah,
so I would say a couple things. One, there's active work going on to understand who they are in AP right now. Part of our ecosystem strategy is what we call build, self-explanatory. And obviously we want to work with ISVs or as a service providers, if you prefer that, to get them to develop on our gear. Sure. on our software, on our middleware. And so there is, the strategy, I would say at this point in time, is fairly embryonic, because I think we lost track of that over the years. By the way, that I can go back to 2008 with IBM, and I was actually leading our build motion, if it's the new name, but back then we called it something else. I was actually leading the build motion worldwide for IBM for information management back in 2008, 2009. So it's something I'm familiar with, and it's something I believe in, but it's also something, if I were being honest, I'd say I think we lost the beat on that one over the last couple of years. And so anyway, long story short is, there's a piece of work going on to understand who they are. We actually have specific build reps tagged against that market segment, if you will, to go out and start talking to these companies and figure out how we can work together. Obviously, there has to be mutual benefit in there somewhere. But to get specific, if there is a company building software that wants to build an IBM, wants to embed our software into their product offering, then there's a tremendous amount of opportunity that opens up for them in terms of marketing, in terms of investment, technical investment, in other words, helping them build and do interesting things with their products. All of that opens up pretty quickly once we identify and form the right relationship with them.
But let me play the devil's advocate here. Well, that's not unique in terms of what even AWS offers or GCP offers. There are these very large SaaS providers who get a lot of all of that. Now, but where IBM makes sense is where, from a regulated industry perspective, and I'll give you an example. There are lots of these companies who are pre-IPO, and they're about to go IPO, and their problem statement is when they start preparing on the road of IPO, they don't understand compliance, and that's where really IBM comes in and turn the needles on compliance and sort of bring all the bells and whistles right. So I think that motion somewhere has been missing because the sales reps, the marketing material, and all of that, credits, etc., is standard game now. I think IBM really comes in from access to regulated industries and stamping compliance, which I don't think in AWS and the others do as well as IBM does.
Well, I think there's work that we can do there that will specifically address that. As you know, we talked a little bit about cloud earlier, and some of our industry-specific clouds, financial services would be a good example. I think there's more work that can be done there, but I would say the thrust of our offering right now is helping them get to a product that makes sense for them in their market, given their value proposition, that is best in class.
So, 10 months into the job, Paul, I'm sure you're looking forward to 2023. What are some of the priorities you're setting yourself?
For 2023, we introduced a new model, not my model, but we introduced globally a new sales model on January 1st of this year. Obviously, I embraced that sales model for Asia Pacific, and then I put an Asia Pacific twist on it. So that model has been rolling out all year. Obviously, we're refining it, tuning it, we're getting better at it. And so 2023 is the year for hopefully flawless execution. And what I mean by that, a sales model is a sales model, but the way we engage with clients, the way we work with clients, the way we bring resources to bear to deliver to clients. We started our conversation with this idea about being a pilot, and a pilot is a lot about process and doing things in a particular way, the same way every time with no variation. The way we deliver value and the resources that we engage to deliver value, it needs to be well-known, well-structured, and accessible so that we can do it quickly. No one wants to spend a lot of time. One of the things that's changed over the last 10 years, we talked about it a little bit earlier, is everything needs to happen faster. Time is now compressed to a significant extent. And so the idea that a partner is going to fumble around for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months trying to figure out how to resource an engagement or how to bring a particular piece of value to bear, it's a non-starter these days, right? And so I think what we've done in Asia Pacific with the labs out of India, with the sales model, with the training of the salespeople, with the open ecosystem as we describe it, all of that is converging on a greater velocity of business and value creation and co-creation with clients. And so 2023 is the year where all of those pieces are in place. Everyone now knows how they work and how they're supposed to work, and it's about execution.
Good. I wish you the very best, Paul, and I'm sure the numbers are going to grow much more from here on.
Maybe surprised at the end of the year. We'll see.
Good. Thanks for your time again, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching yet another episode of Greyhound Research ONTrigger. If you have any hard questions for Paul, do send them in and I'll ensure I'll send them over to Paul. Thanks again.